Hi there, my name is Olivia Stratford. I am submitting my debate, which is on, which is, I believe, debate number 3. And my side is side A. It'll be sometimes states have to suspend protecting human rights for security reasons. And I'll just jump right into it. So when we first discuss national security and human rights, this can be a very touchy subject and difficult to openly discuss due to kind of the almost primal and territorial-like responses when they are taken away or even threatened. We might feel as though our human rights are inalienable regardless of the situation, but the problem is that many don't consider the possibility of extreme national threat or how other countries are handling or have handled their national security crisis. These are major incidents that can, and I believe should, affect our human rights to keep us safe. I'll start with a scenario that a lot of us can be familiar with. It's a little bit easier to digest and comprehend than thinking about big government and national threats. When we're small, our guardians, whether that be our parents or grandparents or foster parent, whoever, set up rules and boundaries that keep us safe. These rules can affect things that we say, do, and believe. Perhaps it's telling us to not touch a hot stove for fear of hurting ourselves, or to not hit our siblings for fear of hurting others. It could even be to not use abusive language and consider how it makes other people feel, giving you the sense that how you make other people feel and how you treat them greatly matters. These regulations are put in place to be sure that we keep ourselves safe as well as keeping others safe. Taking it to a larger scale, we can discuss national security and human rights. As we go through, I'm going to highlight certain human rights and why it would be important to regulate these rights in the case of a terrorism threat, civil war, or other forms of collective violence. It's also important to recognize that governments know more in-depth and secretive information than we do sometimes, most of the time, and it's really important to realize that we don't know the magnitude of the situation many times, though we can assume that we would know what's best. The reason why it's important this reason is why it's important to not elect the most popular or controversial official, but the one that you think you can trust in the most life or death situations. But I've digressed. The first human right that we're going to discuss is actually the 12th human right listed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the right to privacy. In terms of national security, it's important to know what the inhabitants of your country are doing pretty much at all times. Though many of us would like to believe that our private lives should stay private because we don't commit crimes or acts of treason, the U.S. has no ability to be completely certain about who is a threat and who isn't. In situations of high fear in a country, the government might pick up some privacy blockers for certain websites or might take a look into somebody's daily habits to see if they're a threat to themselves or others, and to mitigate the situation before it becomes a bigger threat. If a situation were to get out of hand, governments might place curfews into effect. This could be if there are major violent attacks going on around because we didn't catch on to a hint of some sort in time, a curfew might be put in place. And this could be an infringement on the right to freedom of movement. The freedom of movement states that humans have the right to move freely within the borders of a state. Now, if there's a civil war, like I said, or any other acts of collective violence that are more dense in a certain area, those curfews would be put in place to hopefully keep more of the citizens safe than if they left everybody kind of ignorant to the magnitude of the situation and left them to their own devices. These curfews can be more extreme and can keep people from getting to and from work, which in turn might impede their right to work as well. One more right that's important to discuss is the right to bear arms. During tense and violent times in a country, there is a high possibility for civil tensions to rise against each other and perhaps even create an us versus them mentality to such an extreme level that people may begin committing inexcusable acts of violence, such as murder or mass shootings. During these times, it would be safer for guns to be extremely regulated, if not banned, rather than having no regulation at all. I know that many people will say that they would like a gun for self-defense, but other countries have found ways to keep their citizens' right to self-defense safe while taking guns out of the situation. One example is the United Kingdom, who has placed a ban on all handguns after the 1996 Dunblane School massacre. The only legal firearms in England are sporting rifles and shotguns. Since that massacre, there has only been one other killing spree in UK history, which was back in 2010. In addition to a minimized amount of public violence, though, the police are also not regularly armed, which accounts for lower counts of police brutality and accidental shootings, which we know very well nowadays in the US. Additionally, it's good to add that if the police feel safe without firearms, then I feel confident that we could also be safe without needing a firearm as well. So in conclusion, states should be able to influence human rights for national security, such as terrorism or acts of war. This can affect any and all human rights depending on the situation and magnitude. And human rights aren't black and white. They can exist on a continuum and can be partially or completely limited if it is what is best for the masses.